Sometimes overhead cleaning is referred to as high dusting, but in effect, let me set a context for you. When we clean any facility, we tend to clean the areas that we can reach and see. But we also know that dust really collects in all areas of a facility, even the ones we don't see or can reach. And examples of those are high windowsills. Typically certain office buildings have large picture windows, and the tops of those sills could be 15, 20 feet high, so you don't see them. But that's one example. Another example could be HVAC ducts or pipes, plumbing pipes that run typically in lower levels. Sometimes they're exposed in the fancier buildings, or it could be things like vents that are in ceilings that are high above us, so we don't touch them because we don't see them, kind of out of sight, out of mind. But those are what we typically refer to as high dusting or overhead cleaning requirements, if you will. So before we answer the question of what specific equipment you need for overhead cleaning, I think there are two other things to consider. The first thing to consider is access. And access is important when the area we're trying to clean or the space we're trying to clean is more than 20 feet off the ground, because typically it'll be hard to reach that space from the floor or the ground, and you need special access, whether it's a scaffold or a scissor lift. The second thing to consider is commitment. High dusting or overhead cleaning is something that requires a commitment from both the owner, who is responsible ultimately for the facility, and from the cleaning crew, whether it's an in-house cleaning crew or whether it's a third party doing the cleaning work. And that commitment means that it becomes part of your regular regimen to clean, because the more frequently you do it, the less headache you have in the future. And then the third part comes really to the question of equipment. And in terms of equipment, there are three things to consider as well. The first is the vacuum cleaner. You need something that's powerful enough. The wands are going to give you access to high areas, but also gives you the kind of curvature to get around spaces or into spaces that you need to clean. And the third is the attachments or the tools that are at the end of those wands that allow you to do the overhead cleaning, because it is a bit of a specialized type of cleaning and not something that you do with your regular floor tools. When selecting a vacuum cleaner for overhead cleaning, I think I would look at two measures. The first is the power of the vacuum cleaner. And the measure I would use is CFM, or cubic feet per minute. It's a common measure of performance of a vacuum cleaner, and I would want to use a vacuum cleaner that has a high CFM. And the reason you want to do that is that when you are reaching high spaces, say with a long extended wand, it's easy for the dust to be knocked off and for it to fall down. So the higher the suction, the more air that's flowing through the pipe of the wand, the less likely it is that the dust is going to fall to the ground. So a high CFM is going to be one of my most important considerations. The second important consideration is filtration. Again, the type of dust that you're going to find in overhead spaces is going to be the fine dust. The big particles typically stay down or fall down, and we pick them up without really vacuuming. But the stuff that gathers up overhead is fine dust. And what we want to do is make sure we have a filter on our vacuum cleaner that's able to capture that fine dust. So something with a micron filter or with a HEPA filter would be ideal in this situation. So high CFM and good filtration are the two measures I would use in selecting a vacuum cleaner for overhead cleaning. So today, we talked about how access to overhead cleaning spaces was important. So we'll focus today on what we would need to clean overhead spaces that you can reach from the floor without using scaffolding or a scissor lift. And when it comes to trying to access overhead cleaning spaces, there are a couple of different types of wands that we could use. I mean, there's a whole range, obviously. In the world, people make all kinds of wands. There are two primary kinds. One is a fixed length, and the other one is an extendable length. But neither of these are sufficient on their own. Both of them need extensions, meaning adding more wands on. The rule of thumb is if the space is 20 feet or less, you can use extender wands. If it's more than 20 feet, you're starting to put maybe four wands together and the weight of those wands can make it very cumbersome. If you go beyond that 4, trying to wield 5 wands with one person and control it as well is going to be very difficult. So generally the rule of thumb is use wands for 20 feet or less, and you would have wands like these. So this, for example, is an extendable wand which has a little spring attached. You can extend it, and typically these go about 60 inches or 5 feet. And by adding 4 of them together, you get to 20 feet. And you get a little bit more because obviously you're holding it a little bit higher. Many of these kinds of wands come with a little nifty T-grip, and this T-grip just helps you control the weight of the wand and where the wand needs to be placed. And the other types of wands are fixed length wands, which look something like this, and they come in a variety of materials. The materials that are most common and the most accessible are aluminum or some form of steel. But there's a lot of innovation going on, and some people have made carbon fiber wands which are a lot more expensive but a lot lighter, and sometimes you can go beyond that 20 feet using those wands, but then it becomes a little bit more difficult to see what you're doing. So they have adapted cameras and things like that. So there's a range of innovation going on in this space. But for the most part, the more accessible tools are the ones that have been tried and tested and are available at a reasonable price, and those would be like these fixed wands or the extendable wands I refer to. When you get into specialty materials or with cameras, we're talking about a very specialized type of cleaning, and it's a subject of a different discussion. So now that we've discussed the requirements for a vacuum cleaner, we've talked about the types of wands that you could use to reach overhead spaces or high dusting spaces. Let's talk a little bit about the tools that we would need to complete the job of high dusting or overhead cleaning. Over time, there's been a development of a number of tools and attachments that can be used for overhead cleaning. But today I will focus on maybe 4 of the most common types, but there's a wide range of them. So the first one I'm going to talk to you about is something that we call a felt brush. It's made by Sidewinder, and this felt brush is something that you would use to clean vertical surfaces. So typically walls that might be dusty as a result of some construction work, or just dust accumulating over time, or it could be windows or any vertical surface, you would use something like this. And the up and down movement of the wand is compensated for by the Sidewinder's flexible neck, so it keeps the felt in contact with the wall at all times. Now this could also be used in a horizontal manner in order to do the cleaning. So this is one type of tool that you could use. Another type of tool that you would use could be something like this. This is called a dust brush, and it's a dust brush that has the same Sidewinder flexibility of the neck, but instead of using a 45-degree extender like we used the last time, we're using a gooseneck. This allows you to clean horizontal surfaces that may be high. So for example, a windowsill, a shelf, maybe the top of a locker. That's what you would use, or this is the tool you would use to do that kind of cleaning. Another tool or set of tools that has been developed for overhead cleaning are pipe tools. I have an example here. This is a pipe tool that is used to clean pipes that are 4 to 8 inches in diameter, but they come in a variety of sizes, styles, types, materials, etc. But this is a tool that makes pipe cleaning very easy. And then lastly, I wanted to introduce you to a dust brush. Now this could be attached to the end of the wand and allows you to clean all kinds of things that you may not have easy access to. Little lampshades or emergency exit signs, things that you can't quite reach from the floor but need something like an extended wand to get to. This dust brush is a great attachment at the end. It's got a bit of weight to it, which means that it'll give you more control over what you're dusting and also make sure that the dust comes off easily. So here are 4 examples of tools. We've got tools for vertical surfaces, tools for horizontal surfaces, tools for pipes, and tools for dusting. When thinking about overhead cleaning, there are a couple of mistakes that people make. The first is to assume that it's easy and that it's like doing everything else. It's not. It requires a bit of training, it requires specialized tools, and it requires practice. But with that, pretty much any cleaning crew can do the job. The second mistake people make is to defer it. Out of sight, out of mind is the saying that goes with this. And so while it's out of sight, really the longer you leave it, the harder it is to clean, especially in areas that have high moisture or areas that have oil in the air, like a kitchen. As the dust settles, it mixes with the oil or with the humidity and cakes onto the high surfaces. And when it does that, it makes it much harder to clean. You can't simply vacuum it. You need to use high pressure washers, you need to have specialized access, and it just blows up the process, the cost, creates downtime, and is really not a good idea. So having it as part of your regular cleaning regimen is important and something that should be considered by every cleaning company.